Page 83, theme from a Festive Rondeau. On page 82, they're introducing you to an ornament called a trill. There are a number of ornaments used in music. Trill is just one of them. It gives some of the signs for trills. There might be others, but these are the most common. Simply put, a trill is a note. They'll give you a written note, and it'll be that note and the next note in the scale above that note. If we're in C major, and any written note, let's say it's a G, in the music there's a G written with the trill sign, then it would be that G and the next note up in the scale, which in this case would be an A, because it's the next note in the scale. And you simply alternate these two notes quickly. People don't agree on a lot of things in music, and trills is another one. This is a biggie they don't agree on. And they never agreed on trills. Way back in the 1600s and before, they didn't agree on how trills should be played. And I don't agree with some of this the book is saying. They're indicating that if it was in earlier music, the 1700s before, you begin on the upper note, and then in the later music in the 1800s and after, it began on the main note. No. The question of whether a trill begins on the main note or the upper note has been since the beginning, since there were trills. Some people insisted it begins on the upper note. Some people insist it begins on the main note. And it's always been that way. And it's still that way. In college, when I studied these things, my last piano professor I had, which had the most influence on me in interpretation and so forth, insisted that every trill I played and all the pieces I played, all of them began on the upper note. And it didn't matter the time frame of the composer. I played some 20th century composers, and he still insisted those trills begin on the upper note. Some people will say, well, if the trill is more for harmony, begin it on the upper note. But if that note given in the trill in the music is a melody note, then begin it on that note, because that brings out the melody. Not everybody agrees with that, so good luck on trying to do your trill things. Just know that no matter what you say in a conversation, there can be somebody in there who disagrees with you. Well, let's talk about it. First off, the general idea with trills is they should be controlled and they should be even. There is a thing called an uncontrolled trill, which is you just shake it. You just let it go. I've heard people play these, and I personally do not like them because they sound uncontrolled. The notes are not even. Sometimes they don't sound at all. It's like, bleh. So I prefer to always do a trill rhythmically. I'll divide it up somehow rhythmically, and it depends on how fast I can trill. And I don't trill very well. I never have. I've tried to learn to do it, but it just doesn't work for me. Which finger you use? Well, again, in music, you're liable to need to use most any fingers. You have to be careful. They do give a Mozart's trill exercise at the bottom of the page where he does it with all a combination of fingers. You need to be able to trill with 1 and 2, or 3 and 1, 1 and 3, or 3 and 2, or 2 and 3, and he gives other combinations in both hands. But you'll find numerous videos on YouTube on how to trill, so I'll leave it to you to go look at them on how to trill. Just know it needs to be controlled and it needs to be rhythmical, and you need to try and stay loose. So let's talk about this rondo thing. Common time, or 4/4 time, 2 sharps, so we're either in D major or B minor. Those are the 2 keys with 2 sharps. Well, look at the end, the last measure at the bottom, you're here. It's a D major chord, so I guess we're in D major. Right hand first, coming in on a pickup beat. We're coming in on beat 4, 4 and 1. Just follow their fingering. And the thumb on that D. Then you're here, and then 2/4. And then watch their fingering here in the second line. We want the top note. That's what we're after. And now they're saying thumb. Another fingering you can do here is to do a 2, 1, and then a 2, 3. Try that, because then you can reach that and you don't have to do that. And then you do a 1, 3, 1, 4. Hold the half note down. And don't worry about this trill right now, just play an F sharp. I like to learn a piece without the ornaments first, and I'll go back and add the ornaments later. Ornaments are optional anyway, so we'll deal with that later. And then it's 1, 3. And that A is tied, so hold down and just add the E to it. Here, and then 3, 2, 1. And then you're coming back, and then you repeat that. The last 2 measures at the bottom, you're here. Well, start with the last measure of the second line. You're here. And then this last 2 measures is you're here. And I recommend you do a 1 here, and then come across. And then you can do a 1, 5, 2, 5, whatever you want, it's okay. So there's some trickiness going on in the fingering there. Work that out so you can kind of smooth that out in the right hand. Then add the left hand to it here. And then 4, I like that, 4, 2. See, the chord is really here, and that's the fingering for it, so that's what we would generally do. The 1 and 3, the 5 and 3 is okay at the beginning. You can also do 5 and 4 if you want. And then 4. And then I just do a 5, 2 here. You can do a 5, 1. No big deal. Second line, second measure, I'd do a 4, 1. So I got 5 available for the C sharp. Don't forget the C sharps. And that's about it. The last measure at the bottom, just a 3, 1 is fine. You can just stay in this position. Or you can come up, you have a rest, you can move. Whatever. You decide on the fingering you're going to use, and if it's different than the book, pencil it in and stick with it. And put the hands together. Now, right there at the end of the first line. That is by itself. The left hand has a rest. Make sure that it's a rest. Again, the left hand has a rest. And so forth. Work it out and get the hands. If you're hesitating anywhere, you got any spots you're not sure of, spend extra time on those and work those out, smooth those out. Don't ever use the idea that, oh, I'll fix it a little later. That's a trap, because you won't fix it a little later. You'll keep it. You'll actually practice that hesitation or that mistake in it so much it becomes part of your performance. And then it's really hard to get rid of. So get rid of them up front. Then we can add the articulation. Well, you have staccatos and these tenuto lines. These lines, again, people don't agree on tenutos. Generally, it means you linger on the note. You hold the note out as full value as long as you possibly can. If there's a rest after it, you can hang it onto it, into the rest just a little bit. Just extend it a little bit. If there's no rest, you can't. Make sure you hang on to it the full value. Now, it used to be more of an accent mark where they would accent these a little bit. And then not everybody agrees with that. That was never adopted all the way. Everybody would know. So some people say, no, you just linger on it. Other people say, no, it's a stress mark. You add more information, stress to it. It's an interpretive thing. If you want to treat it as a stress mark, I suggest you do it on an individual basis based on the piece. If you feel the stress is there, then go for it. Here, they've got it in both hands. So you're here and here, and then they keep it in the left hand but not the right. So in my mind, I don't know that I would stress them, but make sure you don't cut these notes short at all. Full value. getting staccatos. Nice wrist staccato here. And we're back to the top note here. Second measure, second line. You got these lines on them. Hang on to them. Get the idea? Then we can go back and we can add the ornaments maybe. And this is where they've got the trills, and they've written out the trill for you up above, and that helps. It's a nice guide. So on the last measure, the second line, they're starting on the upper note, and they're doing 4 16th notes for the quarter. So it's 1 E and a 2 E. And that's fine. I mean, the trills could go faster if you can go fast. Here it's generally just the 4 notes. So to do the last 2 measures of the second line, it's here. 1 E and a 2 E and a. And that's fine. And then this trills, the first trill at the bottom here, it's 16th notes. 1 E and a 2 E and a. See, the last note is tied across. You don't play it again. 1 E and a 2 E and a. And you hang on to it. And that's fine. And then the second trill is again 4 16th notes. And some people will say no, they don't want to repeat that note because, watch. I'm coming off of an F sharp to start the trill, which is an F sharp. And some people will say no, I don't want to repeat that F sharp. So they use that as their excuse to start it on the main note. Some people will say, or it wasn't some, I mean, these aren't just some people, I mean, these are pedagogues and supposedly people who knew what they were talking about. They all had their own opinions and ideas of how these things should be done. Other people, experts, would say, you don't have to repeat it, tie it. So that last 8th note there, going into the 3rd beat, they would just hang it down, hang on to it, and it would become the first note of the trill. So then you would actually start on the E, but it would be after the beat. So some people do it that way. It's an interpretation. I would suggest you go ahead and repeat it. I like their fingering there. It's 3-1-3-1. Because I like to end on a thumb there so I can go over to the 4th finger. Here. Like so. Yeah, I like that. And those are the ornaments on this piece. Then the dynamics. These dynamics are suggestions. I mean, the actual piece, we wrote it, he didn't put in dynamics. But this, they're suggesting loud at the beginning. And basically the whole thing is kind of loud. But make that for the right hand. Keep the left hand down. Get the idea? As far as the speed goes, you can actually find recordings of this various places. It's not a fast, it's not a slow, it's sort of a leisurely pace. Some people will play it rather fast. I think that's a bit fast. In my mind, it's a slower piece. The idea, I hope. Let's play it together slowly to double check the notes and the rhythms. I'm not going to do the dynamics, but I'll try and do everything else, and we are going to do the repeats. So I'll give us 3 counts and we'll play it slowly together. 1 and ready and go and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 2 and 3 and 2. Second ending.